This video analyzes the impact of the United States ignoring the lessons of the Ukraine war.
On February 24, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. The Kremlin expected a welcoming population and the swift collapse of the state. 4 years and over 1 million casualties later, that war is still going. On February 28, 2026, the United States launched a war with Iran. The mission followed the same script: quick victory, regime change, and a friendly government installed within weeks. 60 days later, the Iranian regime remains in place. The United States has taken catastrophic damage, and the war shows no signs of ending. These two countries share almost no strategic DNA, yet they committed the exact same category of mistake just 4 years apart. Both had ignored a shift in the math of modern combat. For decades, two technology curves moved in opposite directions. Consumer electronics, computers, sensors, and chips, got cheaper and more capable every year. Military technology did the opposite. A modern fighter jet, tank, or warship now costs significantly more in real terms than its predecessors. This gap created a global assumption. Only the largest, most well-funded countries could afford to field a modern, high-tech military. Ukraine broke that assumption. They were a poor nation, but they possessed a sophisticated technical class, the same people who handled outsourced software development for the West. When the invasion began, Ukrainians took commercial drones, the kind you can buy for $300, and weaponized them. They flooded Russian positions with these cheap scouts to draw fire. Once the muzzle flashes gave away the Russian locations, they followed up with lethal strike drones. Ordinary citizens turned reconnaissance gear into a lethal kill chain. It was proof that dominance no longer belonged to the country with the most expensive machines, but to the one that could weaponize civilian tech the fastest. Improvisation quickly became an industry. Ukraine's drone production scaled from tens of thousands in 2022 to nearly 1 million a year later. By 2025, they were projecting a capacity of up to 10 million units. Contrast that with the entire Western alliance. Combined, NATO produces drones in the thousands. A country with damaged infrastructure and a fraction of the U.S. economy is outproducing the entire West on the weapon system defining the war. For 2 centuries, artillery was the primary killer on the battlefield, causing 80% of casualties. In March 2026, those statistics had inverted. Ukraine reported that drones caused 96% of confirmed Russian casualties for the month, over 35,000 kills, each with video documentation. NATO saw this coming. During an exercise in May 2025, 10 Ukrainians acting as an opposing force used drones to neutralize 2 NATO battalions in half a day. One commander summarized the result in 3 words: "We are finished." In February of 2026, the sky over the Middle East erupted. The United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, a massive combined air campaign meant to cripple Iranian military installations. The global consensus was straightforward. Everyone assumed that the overwhelming air superiority of the United States would quickly and systematically dismantle the opposing forces in a matter of weeks. But the campaign didn't end in 3 weeks. It dragged on for 60 days, with the most advanced military on Earth taking severe, unexpected hits. A $350 million AWACS aircraft was destroyed while parked at Prince Sultan Air Base. Over $1 billion in sophisticated radar installations were wiped off the map. Multiple American combat aircraft were shot down. In one specific engagement, an advanced F-35 was forced into an emergency landing by a supposedly degraded road-mobile Iranian air defense network. How exactly does a regional military, armed primarily with cheap, low-tech weapons, manage to inflict such heavy losses on the most sophisticated air defense network ever built? The United States built its defensive doctrine around traditional, missile-based air defense. These are incredibly complex systems designed to knock fast-moving, high-tech threats out of the sky. This chart shows the exact cost disparity at the heart of the conflict. The U.S. was forced to fire interceptors costing $2 to $3 million apiece just to shoot down incoming Iranian Shahed drones that cost roughly $20,000 to build. Multiply that mismatch across thousands of incoming targets. In just the first 100 hours of the war alone, The U.S. burned through $37 billion. The Iranian military knew exactly what they were doing. By flooding the airspace with these cheap, disposable drones, they forced the U.S. and its Gulf allies to empty their defensive magazines. That created physical holes in the shield. Through those newly opened gaps, a secondary wave followed. Iran slipped in ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, eventually managing to successfully bomb a major U.S. base with a manned fighter jet. Having the most advanced technology in the world doesn't protect you if your adversary's primary strategy is to mathematically bankrupt your ability to shoot back. The Iranian military didn't invent this swarm tactic in the opening days of Operation Epic Fury. They had been actively studying and perfecting it for 4 years. As Russia's strategic partner in drone production, Iran supplied the exact Shahed platforms that hit Ukrainian cities. By watching those munitions perform against Western-supplied defenses, Iran learned how to fight and win a modern war of attrition. 3 weeks into the conflict, the situation grew so dire that 11 nations, including the United States, formally requested military assistance from Ukraine. They desperately needed the blueprints for the $1,000 interceptor drones that Ukrainian engineers had already developed to counter those exact same Shahed swarms. 4 years after Ukrainian leaders first asked the West for weapons to defend their borders, the flow of information completely reversed. The world's largest superpower had to ask a smaller, war-torn nation how to fight a battle it had failed to prepare for. After the dust settled, there were plenty of technical explanations for why the American military was caught without adequate drone defenses. This timeline illustrates those systemic failures. A rigid procurement system stayed laser-focused on preparing for a hypothetical naval war with China, systematically ignoring intelligence reports and battlefield data pouring in from Eastern Europe. Military leaders operated on a fatal assumption. They firmly believed that their vast advantage in air superiority would easily overwhelm Iranian forces and compel a surrender in 2 to 3 weeks. But if you strip away the procurement schedules and the intelligence oversights, you find a much simpler institutional disease at the root of the problem: arrogance. Russia invaded Ukraine firmly believing it was the world's second most powerful military, and the United States bombed Iran entirely convinced its air power made it invincible. The leaders of both countries held on to those myths long past the point where real-world evidence stopped supporting them. When powerful nations fall in love with their own narratives and stop looking at the hard reality of the battlefield, they pay the price in lives and lost hardware. The arrogance of power is the oldest path to failure there is, and we just walked it again.